Hey, what's going on, guys, and welcome back to another Fallout 4 modding video. Today we're checking out a brand new mod known as the Cowboy Carbine, or known as its real-life counterpart as the Winchester model 1907. This is going to be a pretty interesting gun. It looks like a traditional looking lever action, but it has a magazine. And that's because this is a semi-automatic carbine. Made in 1907, this was Winchester's attempt to break away from their traditional manual action firearms and have something a little bit more competent and modernized. But by far, my favorite thing about this weapon is that despite being a semi-automatic carbine, it is still very classic looking, something that screams Fallout to me, which is why I think it was perfect as a mod for Fallout 4. Aesthetically, this thing was perfect, so now we just needed to find a gameplay niche, so we decided to make this thing a mid-game carbine, only available in semi-automatic, very true to form for the real-life weapon. In real life, this thing does use 351, though we don't actually have access to that ammo type in any mods that we use, so we instead opted for 357 Magnum, a pretty close counterpart, and still a nice heavy-hitting mid-game rifle. In terms of gameplay, like I said, this thing is dedicated for the mid-game. It's going to be really strong for the early game, but it's not going to be super competent late game when you're fighting really big enemies. However, in the mid-game, it's going to be taking out humanoids very easily, but it'll still be able to take out stronger enemies with a few shots. The only limiting factor for this weapon really is magazine capacity, as it is going to have some pretty small mags compared to other weapons, since it only has single-stack 357 magazines. All that considered, it still packs a punch with each individual shot, so if you take your time, aim for the head, this thing is going to be pretty dang competent. It's not going to be as strong as some bigger rifle calibers, but that's the point of a carbine. It's a little bit smaller, a little bit more compact, but it still packs quite a punch. Aesthetically, I think this is a great weapon to use for any sort of cowboy run or Minutemen playthrough, but it is obviously available for anybody to use however they want it. Now, in terms of integration, this thing can be found all around the Commonwealth. It is added to the level list, and it'll start spawning in the world after level 14. Specifically, it will be spawning on Raiders, Minutemen, and Gunners, and you can, of course, purchase it from shops. Speaking of integration, I did mention that we used 357 for this weapon, and 357 is not in the vanilla game, so that means this is going to require munitions, as do a lot of our mods. Munitions is a great little overhaul that adds a ton of different ammo types from the past Fallout games, but it's not super intrusive. You just kind of pick and choose which ammo types you want to add. So if this is the only mod you ever download that uses munitions, all you have to do is add the 357, and that is it. That's all that gets added. It's pretty cool, not intrusive, a very nice little overhaul, but this mod is going to utilize the 357 rounds from that mod, as there's not really a good counterpart in vanilla to use in place of it. Now, on top of the level list integration, there are also a handful of uniques, much like our other mods, that you can find spread all across the wasteland. There are 3 of them in this one. We'll talk about their locations and their different effects later on in the spoiler section. There's also a ton of customization for this mod available over at the Weapons Workbench, a ton of new attachments that offer not only different aesthetics, but different functions for the weapon as well. And of course, there are custom animations, as this weapon does need them to look correct. With the rifle grip, the magazine placement, and everything else that's going on with this weapon, there was really only one anim set that fit this thing correctly, so that's the one that we used. Again, we'll show that off here in just a little bit. Actually, that's going to start right about now, as I think we covered basically all of the basic features of this mod. Let's start talking about some of the specific details, but we're going to start off with its stats. So the basic stats of the Cowboy Carbine are going to be as follows. This thing has a base damage of 32. Ignore the 41 on screen. That is because of some really integral perk mods that I have in my load order that I can't really remove right now. Again, this is using 357. It is available only in semi-automatic in its standard configuration. It has a fire rate of 33, a range of 137, an accuracy of 61, a weight of 11.9 pounds with its current set of attachments, and a value of 117 caps. And of course, all of these stats can be modified by using the different attachments available over at the Weapons Workbench. While we're here, we also get a nice clean look at the model. There is only really one difference between this thing and the real-life version, and that is going to be the charging handle. Normally, this thing actually uses a front plunger, as at the time there was a patent on charging handles mounted to the bolt, so this thing did not have access to that. But in order for us to actually have animations that suit this thing, we did have to make some changes. So either this is a Wasteland add-on that was made for convenience, or maybe that patent didn't exist in the real world in Fallout's universe. Who knows? It doesn't really matter. It's more of an animation convenience thing than it is something that needs to be read into too much. Now then, let's go ahead and check out some of the different uniques available in this mod. Starting off with a really fun one, and that is the long arm. This thing has a few things going on that make it very unique. Starting off with the most noticeable thing, the brass texture on the receiver. It is going to have a different color than the standard metal. Additionally, this thing has a very long scope mounted to the side. It is canted. This is actually a unique scope only available on this version of the weapon. The long scope on the other versions are a little bit different. Additionally, this thing does have a legendary effect. It does bonus damage against raiders and triggermen, since this is the long arm of the law. It's going to do more damage to the bad guys. A pretty fun, unique, I like this thing a lot. Great for a Minutemen playthrough or a Cowboy playthrough. Super cool, a lot of fun to make. This one is very nice looking. It even works as a wall gun if you're not going to be using it, but I like it a whole lot. If you would like to get your hands on this particular unique, it is actually found over in Super Duper Mart, which may seem like an early game location, but it's found specifically in the back rooms at the very end of the dungeon, and it is in a locked crate that has a very hard lock on it, so you are going to have to level up a bit before you're actually able to open it. Now, the next unique we have is known as the Trench Cleaner, and this thing also has a handful of things that make it very unique. Let's start off with visuals. This thing only has one unique difference, and that is going to be a blued sort of receiver. You can't see it too much in the preview menu here because the lighting in preview menus is very weird, but it is blued. It has a nice blued steel on it, which makes it have a cool little and unique and antique aesthetic. But additionally, you'll see that it has a legendary effect that is increased damage after each consecutive hit on target, and that pairs really nicely with its last unique effect, which is this one is actually fully automatic. It is the only full auto version of this gun that you can get. It is in the form of a unique, since I think full auto on the regular version would be a little bit overpowered and sort of break its niche in the base game. But if you do want that option, it's available as a unique that can be found a bit north of Fort Hagen's town. If you head out into the field, there is a crashed tank with a soldier that has this weapon. And finally, that leaves the last unique, known as Hurt Me Plenty. And as you can see, this one has some visual differences right off the bat with a nice bit of barbed wire that you're going to be grabbing. And yes, that's gonna hurt. That's kind of the idea, as this gun does more damage the lower your health is. So as you get beat up, this thing is going to do even more damage, making this a pretty competent little weapon. I like this thing quite a bit. If you want to find this one, you actually find it over at the Coast Guard's Pier. It's where you find a bunch of super mutants. It'll be found up on the roof by the boss chest. Now then, let's talk animations. This weapon does have some tweaked custom animations that are pretty nice. They fit this weapon very, very well. Let's go ahead and show those off now. So there they are. Big thanks to Tactical for having pretty much the only set of animations that would fit a weapon like this, thanks to their Remington Model 8 mod. Let's also talk about accuracy while we are here. As you can see, we have our targets here, and one of these is flipped up. This thing has been pretty fun in testing and has been super accurate. I've been able to use just the iron sights to hit targets pretty far away, so I am quite happy with this weapon. As you can see, we should be able to hit pretty much every target with ease, even the moving target there. And finally, the guy that always gives us trouble even gets hit on the first try. This thing is pretty competent and pretty accurate, even with irons, though there are different optics if you want those things. Speaking of which, let's go ahead and head over to the weapons workbench to check those out. So, for starters, we have the receiver section. As always, we have standard all the way up through advanced. Nothing too special or different on this mod. They're pretty similar to the vanilla receivers, but you do have the different upgrade options there as usual. For barrels, we have a short barrel, a long barrel, a short light barrel, which has some fluting, as well as a long version of that barrel, and then the short heavy barrel, my favorite option, with a long version as well. This has an octagonal design with some nice twists in it that looks super, super cool in first person with different lightings. I like this thing a lot. I'm really glad I was able to pull that design off. It looks super cool. For the different stock options, we have a short stock, which is nice and sawn off, a salvage stock, sort of like the Fallout 3 hunting rifle. It's kind of falling apart, but has a really interesting aesthetic. The standard full stock based on the actual 1907 stock, a taped up version of that stock, the gunslinger stock, which has some nice bullet loops. Even though the thing is a magazine reload, this just has the nice western aesthetic that I like a lot. We have a recoil compensating stock with some springs and a buffer tube, a marksman stock, which offers a nice cheek rest, and a recoil compensating gunslinger stock, which is going to have the buffer tube and springs as well as bullets, so you can have better recoil and faster reload, making this objectively probably one of the best stocks in here, though some of them are a little bit more niche, so it just depends on how you're going to use the weapon. For magazines, we have the standard magazine, a quick eject version, a medium magazine, again with quick eject, and a long magazine with quick eject as well, all of which offering different aesthetics as well as functionality. Then for sights, we have the standard iron sights, a set of glow sights, the hollow scope, a reflex sight, a micro hollow sight, a micro reflex sight, and a micro dot sight. These are usually used on our pistols, but since this is a carbine, and because they just kind of looked cool, we went ahead and threw them on here as extra options. We have a short scope, a medium scope, and a long scope, as well as a night vision scope, which is the Varmint Rifle night vision scope from New Vegas. It looks super cool on this gun. I like it a whole lot. Then for muzzles, we have the option for no muzzle, a brand new bayonet. This is a custom bayonet with a nice tri-point on it. Looks pretty cool. A compensator, which is based on the compensator I actually put on this gun in real life. A very interesting design. A muzzle brake, a spiked muzzle brake, a suppressor, and a heavy suppressor. I had two fun suppressor designs, and I really wanted to throw the Maxim Antique suppressor on this thing, since I think it fits very well. So that's going to be a nice upgraded suppressor with some better stats in case you want to use it instead. And finally, that leaves the accessory slot, which has only one attachment, and that's going to be the vertical foregrip. And actually, this vertical foregrip has custom animations. I forgot to show those off earlier. I'm sure that you saw them, though, in some of the B-roll that was playing earlier in the video. If not, you'll see them probably here in a second as well. It has custom animations. They're not very different. You hold the gun with a vertical foregrip, but it does give you some better recoil control and accuracy, so it's a pretty nice attachment. It depends on what you like, though. If you want a little bit more classic, you throw it here. If you want a little bit more gangster, you throw it here. It's up to you. So yeah, guys, that is the Winchester 1907, or known in-game as the Cowboy Carbine. A really, really fun gun. I think this thing fits Fallout super well. I wish we had one in New Vegas, but at the very least, we've got a mod for it now in Fallout 4. So if you'd like to check this thing out, it will be linked down in the description. There may or may not be a non-munitions version to come in the future. It just kind of depends on the demand for it. I haven't seen too many people asking for it yet, but in the meantime, it will be a munitions weapon using 357. Let me know what you think about that in the comments down below. As always, this thing is available on Nexus right now. There may be a port for it very soon over on Xbox. I don't think there is one just yet, but those come out pretty quickly after my releases, so just stay tuned if you're an Xbox user. With that, I hope you guys enjoyed the video, and I hope you enjoyed the mod. If you'd like to support my work directly, you can do so using the link down in the description to support me on Patreon, but of course, this is completely optional, just a donation thing if you're into that sort of thing. With that, I hope you guys enjoyed, and I'll see you all in the next one. Peace!